For one of the few times of the year, we didn't have any fights on Saturday, but we still were able to persevere. We got through that, and we're here today, Blake, and that's ultimately all that matters. Even though I was a little pathetic, spent a lot of time just watching a bunch of highlights and some tough highlights, getting ready for the show dropping on Tuesday evening, but we made it through, and we made it all right, right? You feeling good? Feeling good, even though we didn't have any fights this weekend?
Yeah, I feel pretty decent. We had some NBA playoffs going on, kept me distracted a little bit. You
Right?
know, but I do miss fist fights. I'll tell you that.
Man, there's nothing better than seeing some leather hit some skin on a Saturday night, or sometimes Saturday afternoons. And on the rare occasions, Wednesdays. Man, that was such a weird card at the beginning of the year. But ladies and gentlemen, what we have today is Tyron Woodley. He's not in Bellator yet, but he is in a boxing ring. He's taking on Jake Paul, and oh boy, there's a lot. I mean, dude, he really has to win this one. Stipe Miocic wants that trilogy with Francis Ngannou, plus some previews into TUF, getting ready for TUF. We're going to give you our most notable TUF winners over the years, and also some words that Volkanovski had about Brian Ortega, as well as some changes that need to happen to MMA according to this ESPN writer. Then we're going to give you our top 5 strikers of all time in UFC history. Of course, Blake's bangers. Always got to have those. That's the staple of any week we're going into a fight card. Then also our Nene of the week. But before we get into things, of course, I'm your host, Ross Allen, joined alongside by UFC correspondent Blake Campbell. And Blake, let's not dilly-dally around. But first, just a word from our sponsor, Thrive Fantasy. For all your your sports prop betting needs, go on over to thrivefantasy.com or download the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store. It's super easy app. It puts everything, gives you all the information you really need to make a good bet here. And it's a lot of prop betting. You can get your team together. You get like these multiple odds, multiple points, and then you can just win some money off of that. It's good fun. It's almost like a game, a new, fresh take to betting. So I would go ahead and check that out. And if you use our promo code 4thandlong, not only do they match you of deposits up to $20, they'll match you up to $50 per dollar right there. So go get your money today. And of course, you can always become a very prestigious member of our Patreon community and our Patreon patrons. So for just starting at $1 a month, you get behind the scenes content, you get early shows, and you get a bunch of merch and a bunch of other goodies. So go on over to patreon.com/4thandlong to go check that out today. But Blake, I think the biggest news, and I guess technically it's the MMA community, or are we just referring to him as retired MMA fighter, current rapper, Tyron Woodley, because he is going to be the next opponent for Jake Paul. This is going down August 28th, and we actually have Tyron Woodley opening up as a close underdog. So do you have any thoughts about this one? I mean, this has to go better than Ben Askren, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's actually a fight this time. Like, he's gonna actually try and hurt Jake Paul, but it's still just kind of, I don't know, man. There's a lot of unknowns. I think we're still in the midst of finding out. Like, boxing is its own sport, and MMA is, kind of a different beast. And when you don't have the time and focus to put all of your energy into just that one aspect of fighting, some YouTuber might turn out to be a little bit better than you, and that's what I'm scared to find out is if Jake Paul can somehow manage to get this done, we're not going to hear the end of it. That ego is going to just freaking explode.
It's going to be so bad, but the hard part about this is obviously Tyron Woodley has a lot better of a chance in this fight over Ben Askren. Ben Askren, I think, was older, maybe had some more surgeries, but then also he was a grappler and he was a wrestler. He was not a guy that will throw strikes in the UFC, and then he might be a little bit of a shell of himself. But remember, Tyron Woodley is the guy that put out Robbie Lawler, that was welterweight champion of the world, that has one hell of a right hand, and he's been loading that thing up for 16 rounds, and so there's a lot that has to be charged by now, right? And he has to have some power behind the hand. If he lands, yeah, Jake Paul's probably going to go out, but it's just tough because his last 16 rounds obviously had not been the best work of his career, have they?
No, I mean, yeah, the recent matches have not given the MMA community, I think, a lot of confidence. But you never know. I mean, like you said, he's definitely way more athletic, way more quick twitch than Ben Askren or, well, I mean, maybe not Nate Robinson, but at least he's not 5'7", 5'6".
At least he's an actual fighter and not a basketball player.
Yeah. So it's just gonna depend, man. Like Tyron's gonna have to go in there with a game plan. He's got a little bit of film on Paul, not a whole lot. So that's what kind of sucks too. Is like Tyron Woodley is kind of a known commodity, right? Like there's probably hours worth of tape out, like from actual fights that he's been in. Whereas Jake Paul, I think all of his fights combined, probably under 30 minutes. I don't remember his first. Actually, I think all of his fights have ended by knockout, huh? So probably under 10 minutes. So there's not a lot to work with there, and not to mention he's going to keep progressing, right? So there's a lot of unknowns when it comes to Jake Paul, and I just hope the money's worth it, and I hope he gets the job done because, you just go over to Ben Askren's comment section on Instagram, and you'll see how bad he's getting lit up every day.
Oh, it's really awful. I'm more than happy if Tyron Woodley somehow gets the knockout in this one. I'll be more than happy to erase the past 16 rounds of his career and even his rap career from my mind and just celebrate him as an amazing fighter and man that he is. And I think my biggest concern here is that I still believe that the Askren fight was rigged, that Askren took a fall, that he took a dive. And I think my biggest fear is that happening again with Tyron Woodley. But that's boxing for you, and that's why it's a dying sport. Speaking about punching, heavy people punching, I guess that's not the best segue. But Stipe Miocic, he still badly wants that trilogy with Francis Ngannou. He said recently that he knows what he has to do to win, and that he is dying for a opportunity at a third fight with Francis Ngannou. So, especially with Ngannou not having a fight announced yet, and it's been a little bit now, it's supposed to be Derek Lewis. That hasn't come to fruition. It was originally supposed to be Jon Jones. That obviously didn't come to fruition. So, would you want to see this fight, and do you think Stipe would have a better chance in this one, and what do you think some of the tweaks he might make are?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't know why anyone wouldn't want to see that fight again. I mean, he's only the best heavyweight of all time in UFC history, has the most title defenses ever, and he's already beat Francis one time. So,
dominated Francis one time.
I wouldn't mind seeing them run that one back because I think Stipe knows, like, maybe, I don't necessarily know if the weight was really the big difference there. I heard him say he wants to add 10, 15 more pounds.
That would make a lot of sense. He was closer to 230, 235.
Yeah.
So him closer to 245, 250 maybe.
And that would make sense if he's trying to go back to that wrestling heavy game plan, right? Well, maybe not wrestling heavy, but at least trying to utilize it, because he couldn't even utilize it last fight. When he tried to utilize it, Francis basically just brushed him off.
Stuffed everything, then that stuff is what led him to pretty much getting the knockout. And then maybe the extra weight will help his chin a little bit more against a freak like Ngannou is too.
Yeah, help his chin maybe a little bit, who knows. But yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing that fight again, but yeah, let's see Derek Lewis get that fight first. Let's get some new blood in there. And then Stipe can get the next shot, and I guarantee Jon Jones still won't be ready, so he can have the next shot after that, and then maybe there's even another rising contender before that. So I have no problem with Lewis getting this next shot, which should be pretty soon, I would think, right? Has that been announced?
It's still supposed to be August. Nothing's official.
Okay,
that's what's killing me, man. Nothing's official for this heavyweight belt. I
mean, really, Francis could defend twice this year.
Yeah.
He really could take Lewis out if it happens in August, and then possibly even late December, maybe early January of 2022. So yeah, I think there's a lot of possibilities for that heavyweight division, and Stipe Miocic is not a bad option at all.
No, the thing about Stipe is that he says that he knows what he has to do to win, and given how damn good he's been and how historically of a legend he's been in this heavyweight division, you have to believe him. You have to take his word on it, because if you remember, he had the perfect game plan for Francis Ngannou in their first fight. Obviously, things didn't go to plan in their second fight. It looked that there's some talks that he almost got away from Stipe did from his original game plan. So if you give this guy some time, run it back, I think this third fight will be drastically different from the first two fights. I think each fights of this trilogy are going to be different ones. And I'm super excited to see how that plays out because, man, this Stipe's earned a rematch for the heavyweight strap. And so I really don't think that would be the worst thing in the world to give to him, especially if, for whatever reason, the Derek Lewis fight falls through. Because it hasn't, like I said, hasn't been booked yet. So, just in case, would not be a bad option there. And then, I mean, if you want to throw it back to boxing, let's talk about this crazy thing that just recently came out from the man, the myth, the legend himself, the Chrome Dome, the guy that gets all the deals done. Ali, over on Mike Tyson's Hotbox, he said that Khabib was offered $100 million by the Saudi government to fight Mayweather. This is according to Bloody Elbow. Or this is from an article from Bloody Elbow about this too. And then Ali said all this stuff on the Hotbox. And then Khabib turned it down because he was retired. His mom didn't want to fight. And so he wasn't going to fight. So, do you put a lot of weight into this? Do you think it would have even been a thing to really care about? And also, hypothetically, who would win?
I mean, it's interesting. I like hearing the numbers that are, because that's just about what Connor got, right? 100 mil?
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's just interesting to kind of compare numbers. But does it carry much weight in terms of like, was I really looking for that fight? No, probably not. And that's no disrespect to Mayweather or Nurmagomedov, but styles make fights, right? I mean, I can't really talk crap on Khabib like that. Maybe he would bring something to the table in terms of striking, but I just don't know if it would be. I mean, we saw what happened with McGregor and Mayweather. Like Mayweather basically allowed him to stay in there for, however, 8-10 rounds whenever he knocked him out finally.
But the same thing, though, like there's a lot of talks that Mayweather was just tiring Conor McGregor out for that long, and so he could just piece him up at the end. We all know that Conor McGregor's gas tank has never really been that crazy, and we all know what Khabib Nurmagomedov's gas tank is like. So that's what intrigues me the most, quite frankly.
But
and also,
I
Khabib
think everyone
did drop
could agree.
Conor.
I think everyone could agree that his striking is not on any type of similar level to those two.
No.
And yes, he did drop Conor, but that drop was more of like a timing thing than really, I think, just him outboxing him or anything like that. It was just the perfect strike thrown at the perfect moment and totally caught Conor off guard. But I still think in terms of technique, Conor probably has the cleaner technique and more tools in the shed.
Yeah. It'd be hard not to say that. Hypothetically, though, will you just have Mayweather win this one?
I'd say Mayweather wins by a landslide. Yeah. Whatever round, he
Who would have a better performance, him or Khabib or Conor?
I mean, I don't know. That's tough. Because I can't even imagine Khabib boxing.
Right? Isn't that well?
So I think Conor by default.
Khabib did have a decent stand-up game showing against Justin Gaethje.
Yeah.
So
definitely, and that's why I'm hesitant to say all these harsh words that I'm saying.
Right. It's hard because Floyd, the greatest defensive boxer of all time. Khabib, one of the greatest, just a guy that will pressure you and smother you to death. So that's almost like, I kind of want to put some weight into Khabib, but at the same time, it's Floyd.
But what's he going to do in a boxing ring, dude? They're going to break him up instantly.
That's the thing, though. I guess I would have to go with Floyd in this one, but I think Khabib would do a better job in the square circle than Conor. Just because that cardio. I think he'd be able to stick in it, at least stick in it a little longer. Also, man, then Dagestani's are probably built different, and then, I don't know, if he actually had to train for a boxing fight, I think Khabib might be able to step up to the table. Maybe.
Yeah, I think Mayweather smokes him.
Maybe.
Really easily.
I'm just glad we never got this fight.
I'm not interested in it.
No, that we really kind of dodged a bullet there as an MMA community. Now the next thing we want to talk about, another thing said on a famous podcast. This was Alexander Volkanovski over on the JRE. This was recently after they finished recording for TUF. And Volk came out and was calling Ortega a fake guy. Like, he acts one way, he's really not, and he's a big pretender. And then it was almost some surprising words because, I mean, Volkanovski, he's really only hated because of the controversy with his fights with Max Holloway. But besides that, he's nothing but a great guy. He's nothing but a cool guy. If it wasn't for the controversy with Max Holloway, most of the MMA community would love this guy. Then Brian Ortega is someone that the MMA community loves. These are two well-liked fighters and well-respected fighters. So do you think this is just a way to hype up TUF and their future fight? Or is this Volkanovski actually trying to... Is he actually being legit with this? Or do you buy into this?
Kind of. He seemed pretty genuine because are you referring to the Rogan podcast that he went on?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I just watched I think there was like a 10 or 16 minute clip on YouTube that I watched, I think last night. And he seemed like he was being pretty serious. Like he you can already tell there's that kind of competitive fire between those two.
Oh yeah.
And it makes sense. Everything he's saying would be a valid reason for someone to get on your nerves. So yeah, I'm kind of buying it right now. And honestly, it kind of pumps me up because we were talking about this before. They needed this, right?
Yeah.
Like, because going into this season, no one really cared about Ortega versus Volk. I mean, the fight itself was going to be sick. Everyone was excited for the fight.
But then in the cage, yes, but personality.
We don't know enough. I mean, Brian is a budding star, right? Like he's kind of been pushed by the UFC a little bit. He's got the movie star looking face, but
he's
Volk,
got the loss.
Like you said, he's kind of not the most popular guy right now because of those performances against Max Holloway, and it really wasn't even his fault. It's more the judges, right?
Yeah, 100%.
So I think this is perfect. Whether it's kind of been formulated and made up.
Dana White's on the phone. Hey, Volk, say this on the Jerry, okay? People talking.
And we'll see, right? When we watch it tonight, when we watch it for the next 12 weeks, we'll see how it plays out. But if it is genuine, like it sounds, I love it because that's going to just get more hype and get everyone more invested.
See, the thing is, we all love a good show of sportsmanship going into a fight, We love it when there's not really a bad blood. One of the biggest ones that jumps to mind is Israel Adesanya versus Anderson Silva. There was no bad blood between them. It was a fight that was 100% respect, and you saw that inside the cage, too. Those can be really entertaining, but let's be honest, most of the time, it's a sport about fighting. It's fun to see people hate each other, and especially even when it's kind of fake. Like, we remember the Michael Bisping working with GSP to hype up their fight more than to seem like they hate each other more than they actually did. When they were talking behind the curtain saying, Bisping say this, GSP say that, and stuff like that. And so that adds to it. I can't deny it, that controversy and hatred and genuine disliking between each other adds to a fight. And I think in the case like this where I feel like it's almost a little more needed in this situation. So I'm cool with it. But it's certainly going to be really interesting to see how this plays out through all of TUF. And then the last kind of story we want to talk about today is that ESPN recently put out an article about changes that they're recommending the MMA community and MMA promotions make. This is by Jeff Wagenheim, and he's a combat sports writer, and he's been with a number of papers, media companies, ESPN now, was with the Boston Globe. Funny thing enough, he talks MMA, but he's also considers himself a pacifist, so maybe that's why. He kind of put out some weird points he was trying to make here, and personally I didn't really understand all these, and then some of them are weird complaints, and some of them were points I made a couple decent points, but a couple ones that I did not agree with. One of them being that they should add more weight classes so we can get more champions. And now that sounds great in practice, more champions, more people to like, but at the same time I feel like that would almost water down the belt a little bit if you keep on adding too many. Blake, do you kind of share the same sentiment there, or what do you think about the possibility of adding more weight classes?
I mean, I wouldn't mind maybe a weight class being added. like the 165-pound division that always gets talked about. The problem with that is it just kind of dilutes all the other divisions, but at the same time, it's kind of a double-sided sword, right? Because you'll have dilution of certain weight classes. Like there's going to be movement. Some guys will want to go up, some guys will want to go down. Whatever is closest to their most, I get wherever they feel like they're going to perform the best. But I don't know. I think they do a decent job now in the UFC. I don't see them adding a ton of weight classes. It's just, I don't know. It just doesn't seem like it's going to happen.
I think that got the perfect mix because one of my biggest gripes about boxing is that everyone has a belt and there's a million different belts for all these different promotions, all these organizations. It feels like you have like a weight class every 5 pounds. And then when you have so many places where there's champions, you have so many champions. If you have so many champions that you can't even remember the name of the champion, I think that's a problem. So there is a balance there. I think the UFC is almost at the perfect amount of balance, the number of championships to have, especially like look at the women's weight class. You don't even it's only 2 to 3 of those belts makes sense because I say the strawweights, the flyweights, and the bantamweights make sense, but the featherweights, you win 1, maybe 2 fights at that weight, and you get a title shot. So I'm not a fan of this one, quite frankly, and I just don't think it would work out well. He also goes on to talk about maybe some cross promotion for the UFC. That will never happen because why would the UFC ever need to cross promote with anyone? They're the biggest company in the world, and when you cross promote, you have to have both sides have to benefit. It has to be mutually beneficial. Is the UFC going to benefit by having a ONE FC or a Bellator fighter on their card?
That's just a huge risk, I would say, because if that guy beats them, now they can have the claim to saying, oh, we house we have the best fighters on our roster. We're beating UFC guys, which is kind of why they're trying to sign all the UFC guys. Demetrius Johnson, Eddie Alvarez. But
you already had that with Pitbull trying to claim Steak at the best 45er.
I just think I think Dana's playing his cards correctly. It's just unlikely. It's kind of a cool idea, I guess, but it would just be very select, right? It wouldn't be all the champions I'm interested in. It would just be like one fighter in Bellator.
I don't think it would be a champion.
Thing. Like MVP would be cool to see come over. Michael Venom Page.
Yeah. It would
but he's not a champ.
Well, they're almost talking about him signing with the UFC, and he shows interest in signing with them. So
that'd be sweet.
That'd be pretty sweet. And then, but I could see that between organizations like Bellator and ONE FC. If they do some stuff between each other, then that could be beneficial for both, and that could be mutual.
That could create some hype.
Yeah, right.
UFC doesn't really need to create hype. They're on ESPN.
UFC is the hype.
Yeah.
That's why you have all these Bellator guys at the peak of their career jumping ship to the UFC, There's a reason that the jokes are that when the UFC fighter does bad, they go to Bellator.
Right.
There's no need for the UFC to bring that on. And then one of the last things, though, don't want to slam this guy too hard because there is one point or a couple points I hear that I do agree with. One of them being that refs need to really enforce the rules, not have as many warnings and stuff like that. Grabbing the cage, groin strikes, eye pokes, stuff like that. To maybe give one warning, but also start taking points quicker. And also open scoring and letting the fighters see what the scores are after each round. Are you a fan of either of these?
Yeah, I guess,
Mm-hmm. You like the open scoring, or do you have a problem with the way that the referees enforce the rules right now? Too many warnings?
I think, so I think the referees enforcing the rules could be a little bit better, but what do you want them to do? Start just deducting points? That's really the only option they have.
That's a tough thing, right?
And it's a fight, man. Sometimes you really cannot control where your kick. You're aiming at a certain area, but stuff happens so quickly in a fight, right?
Yeah. And it's a matter of inches.
Stuff's just bound to happen.
If you're going for a gut kicking and you hit someone in the groin, that's a matter of inches.
But eye pokes, stuff like that, I think that there needs to be maybe one warning, and then that is it. You know, once you're striking someone again in the eyes, it's got to be a point, man, because that's too much of an advantage for the other person. When you're affecting someone's vision.
Mm-hmm.
And then the open scoring, I don't know.
There's been such a debate about this one, hasn't there?
It's kind of tricky because I'd like it, and I'm sure the fighters would probably like it. But at the same time, it kind of takes that whole, surprise, I guess you could say, feeling at the end, or maybe surprise is the wrong word, but it's like,
was it Chill talking about that? I think it was Chill talking about that, and it was a good point.
Could have been.
I think here, how's this for an idea, Blake? Instead, no open scoring, but one thing I would like to do, I want to throw this into football. One thing that I loved that the NFL doesn't do, but one thing that the XFL did do, is that when they were doing a video replay and review, that they would on streaming to the TV, so you can hear it as someone watching it on TV, watching it live. You can hear the replay official talk out his decision and what he's looking at in the replay and how he makes his decision. So what if it could be in writing, it could be a really short description, it could be something a little longer. But what if we get each judge giving the reason behind why they scored around this way? Maybe verbally or just like some notes written down. Make it a little more clear.
Good. I mean, yeah, best of luck to everyone trying to make that happen.
Would you be a fan of that? Do you think that could help it, though? Maybe just a little more clarity?
I guess. Yeah. Like, just a little paragraph you're saying, like, on the card?
Not even. Maybe just some bullet points after each round saying, he won this because of this. Or he scored it this because of this, you know? It could be a sentence. I just want to see something. Because some of these scores that we get, like especially Salty Amada, oh man, it doesn't make sense. I just want to see their thinking behind some of these bad scores that they give people.
Yeah, I mean that'd be interesting.
Hey,
I wouldn't mind seeing it.
Hey Dana,
that's a lot of work. You know what I'm saying? They probably don't want to do none of that.
I mean, heaven forbid that these judges actually have to do a little more work, man. Jeez. But it is what it is on that one. But ladies and gentlemen, now we're going to roll into Blake and I's list of our most notable TUF winners. We each gave 3 here, and there's a lot of talent that has come off these TUF. I believe there's been 11 champions or interim included, that have been contestants or winners as members of the number of TUF seasons that we've had. So, Blake, let's see your names. Who are your 3 most notable fighters over the many years of TUF?
I gave my 3 were Michael Bisping, Matt Serra, and Robert Whitaker. All 3 were champs. Matt Serra beat GSP. Michael Bisping had probably one of the most insane rides, in terms of just like his career in the UFC, up and down, reaching the top. And then Robert Whitaker, I mean, that's just a guy that's kind of, I think, just a pro's pro, Mm-hmm. That's kind of like if you had to like kind of create a UFC character, that's kind of who you'd want to go for, right? Because he's just solid everywhere. He's got great striking, great wrestling. He's even-tempered, great personality. He just really, he's just a professional, man, in every sense of the word.
Funny as hell, too. Always a good interview with that guy. Jeez. And also, man, he is pretty shredded. And I'm super excited to finally see him get a second chance at reclaiming that middleweight strap. For me, I had to go with, of course, man, he has to be on any list like this, Forrest Griffin. When you think of TUF, you almost always think of Forrest Griffin. And the TUF 1 season finale between him and Stephen Bonner, that classic, that essentially, if you haven't had it, I'm sure most of you guys have, but that fight essentially saved the UFC. The other one being, Stockton's own Nate Diaz, the TUF 5 winner, because it's Nate Diaz. The dude's a thug. The dude's an animal. He's always had some super exciting fights, and he's funny as hell as well, at least when you can understand him. Then my last one's going to be one of the more recent seasons, TUF 21's winner, Kamaru Usman, because of what he's been able to do, arguably the greatest welterweight fighter of all time, and he's still going. He's still in his prime, or maybe not even might not even be in his prime yet. So that's one thing I love, though. That's why I'm so glad they brought back TUF, because going into the seasons, you hardly know who the hell these guys are. But looking back on the years now, some huge names to come out of TUF. So I'm super excited to see this crop, because, you know, Blake, you and I don't really know many of these fighters besides the interviews we've seen leading up to the release of the season. But you never know what name could come out of that. That's why I love TUF so much.
Yep, that's growing new stars. I mean, it's just bound to happen. There's going to be someone good from that show. It's got to happen. It seems like every single season, there's at least one or two good people that not even like just the winners, but there's like Violent Bob Ross, for example, Bryce Mitchell. He didn't win. There's just great talent, you know.
Yeah, it's super exciting, man. I just love the amount of MMA, the MMA talent pool, and that thing has grown tremendously over the last number of years. So it's super exciting. Then before we get to Blake's bangers for UFC Vegas 28, we want to drop our list of figuring, hey, why not? There's been a lot of debate over this. You know, some boxing news, you know, TUF and stuff like that. It's always fun. It's always fun to give some top 5 lists like this. So I figured we give our top 5 UFC strikers of all time. So Blake, would you like to start us off with your number 5?
I didn't really number them in terms of like 1 through 5. I kind of just did 5.
You gave us your 5. Let's see who you got in here then.
I got Conor McGregor, Edson Barboza, Anderson Silva, of course, Israel Adesanya, of course, and Stephen Thompson.
I love that. Who does it? It's Anderson Silva number 1, right?
If I had to rank them, it would probably be Silva number 1, because he kind of just inspired like a generation, I'd say, damn near.
A little more than a generation.
And then in second place, I'd probably put McGregor, to be honest.
I guess a little more prime McGregor in that spot.
Yeah, and then it'd be Adesanya, and then it's like really a tie between Barboza and Thompson. But Barboza might get the nod just on sheer violence, and those body kicks are just disgusting.
I'm kind of surprised they put Edson Barboza up there, because, I mean, obviously not a bad name, but there's just some others that you might think of before him. But man, well deserved that spot. And
ask Thompson, any guy that's fought Edson Barboza. Exactly. I'm sure they will agree with me.
You gotta talk to Shane Burgos, man. He didn't even know
Dan
he got
Hooker,
put out.
All those guys, man. Freaking sheesh. He puts a hurting. And the thing with Barboza that I love is it's just he can hit you from anywhere. I mean, he's going to hit your legs. He's going to hit your body. You saw his shin, what he did to his shin on Burgos last fight.
It looks so brutal. And
not to mention, he has the insane kicks where he does, the spinning back heel knockouts over the top, of the temple.
Right.
He's got it all, man. Remember what he did to Kevin Lee? Made him do the chicken dance, even though he lost that fight?
That was still funny as hell, though.
Dude, that was crazy. I thought Kevin was going to break his freaking legs walking like that. Looked like he was on stilts.
So he's made someone do the chicken dance, and he's made someone get knocked out 3 seconds after punching him. Edson Barboza.
Maybe even more, like 5. It was weird. That was a weird knockout.
That was... I'm going to talk about that for a while, because that's still one of the weirdest things I've ever seen take place in the octagon. For me, if I had to go from 5 to 1, I'm going to put Max Holloway up as number 5, just because the sheer amount, he's an extremely technical fighter, and the amount of strikes that he lands, if you want to, I mean, we all know the saying, the punches and bunches. Max Holloway kind of puts a new meaning to that saying, because he just lands, and he is so far ahead on any list of most significant strikes in a fight, or significant strikes attempted, all-time career, in a fight, in a round. This guy is just all up and down that list, so to see what he does is insane. And of course, you gotta put Israel Adesanya on that list. I have him number 4 just because he's still a relatively young fighter and has a lot of room to grow. And by the time his career is over, I'm sure he might be could be number 1. Quite honestly, could be number 1. Number 3, I mean, he was obviously very technical, maybe not the most technical on this list, but just because you've never heard of a saying this badass. Was a left leg hospital, right leg cemetery. And Mirko Cro Cop, man, this dude murked people. At least in his prime. Took a couple bad knockouts when he made it to the UFC, unfortunately. But this dude was scary as hell. And the craziest thing about this, Blake, is that not only did he kill people in MMA fights, but he probably actually killed a number of people in real life too with his former profession before his MMA career took off. So that's just a scary, scary individual. I have Jon Jones at number 2. Just because he's arguably the greatest fighter of all time. If it wasn't for the controversy, he'd probably be the greatest fighter of all time. Also the picograms also help him out a little bit there, I guess, too. But just because the way this guy is so precise, everything looks crazy. He fully utilizes the point of his elbows, the point of his knees, the heels of his feet, all the hardest parts on your body. This dude could put on a clinic, at least when he was still fighting. So that, and obviously Anderson Silva, number 1. I mean, no one's topped the Spider yet. They've gotten close. But I don't know, Blake, do you agree? Is he good? Does he have the potential to top Anderson Silva?
Who is he?
Yeah.
I mean, I think so.
If
he just has to stay active.
All right. And he's been the most active UFC champion since he started his title reign too. Mm-hmm. So super exciting.
Keep cleaning out that division.
Right, until he gets.
He's already getting up to number 2 on a bunch of these guys. So.
Mm-hmm. And Vittori, that's going to be such an interesting fight this summer. And then also, Whitaker. If Whitaker gets a second chance, is he? I think that's a totally different fight the second time around. But I would love to know what you guys think, whether it be your favorite TUF moments, whether it be your top 5 strikers of all time. Let me know what you guys have down in the comments on YouTube. Let us know over on Instagram or Twitter. Instagram at 4th Long Radio, Twitter at 4th Long Radio. And even leave your list in a 5-star review over on Apple Podcasts with us. That's going to take us into UFC Vegas 28 and the best moment of every single week, at least the ones we have fights. The moment you all look forward to, Blake's Bangers. Blake, what do you have for us this fight card?
Okay, so this fight card, I have Jordan Levitt, who I don't know if you guys remember, but he got that like 22-second knockout.
The slam, man.
With the slam, and he just looked crazy. Like,
was that the McGregor and Poirier card?
I can't remember which card it was, but I just remember how crazy he looked afterwards. Like, he was just talking like a psychopath. So I'm very excited to see that guy fight. He's fighting against Claudio Puelles. Probably butchered that name. Sorry, buddy. So I think they might be like one of the first fights on the prelim card too.
Sorry, that was shoot, man, that's like back in December. Never mind, I thought that was a January fight. No, that was a Hermanson Vittori card.
Oh, okay.
Man,
wow.
Man, I thought he fought soon. Man, that's that flew by. Jeez.
Yeah. So yeah, they're gonna open up the card, so that should be a decent one. We'll see if he's got another knockout in him like that. My second fight to look forward to is Miguel Baezza versus Santiago Ponzinibio. I mean, this just kind of speaks for itself.
Anything Ponzinibio in it, jeez.
What's interesting though is Ponzinibio is coming off of a TKO loss, right, to the Leech. So we'll see how he bounces back. Usually he's the one putting the hurting on people.
And that's a surprising loss too.
Yeah. And then my final banger, I'm gonna go with the big boys, Harris versus Tabura. Walt Harris versus Marcin Tybura.
Yeah, I love this Tybura. A little more of a recent guy onto the UFC scene, but he's been climbing quick. Unfortunately, Walt Harris has been dropping. Was it a 3-fight losing streak now at this point, isn't it?
Yeah. Ever since that whole the stuff with his stepdaughter, unfortunately.
Yeah. So, I mean, Tybura could either lost, so I'm kind of rooting for Walt Harris on this one. I just want to see him get back on track, man.
Tybura knocked out Greg Hardy most recently, right? That was that was a good.
Made everyone happy with that KO. That's for damn sure.
Yeah, he was kicking butt in that fight, and then he beat Rothwell before that, and he's actually on a pretty decent win streak right now. 3-win streak.
He's one of the bigger breakthrough. There's been a lot of breakout stars onto this heavyweight division recently. I mean, between him, he's want to throw Tanner Boser up there. you could definitely go and put Chris Daukaus up there. I already said that guy's going to be a top 5 fighter by the beginning of next year. So that's one of the best parts. Love this young heavyweight division. I'm super excited for that. Obviously, they could really put anyone on, but just a week after having no fights, to have anything is going to be a lot of fun. And then also, having Ariane Lipski in the featured bout of the prelims, that's going to be one of the better women's fights and one of the little more exciting ones that we have there. Tanner Boser, speaking of which, that heavyweight fight between him and Ilir Latifi, that's going to be maybe one to look out for. And then also, of course, it's going to be really interesting. Rosenstruck has lost 2 in a row now. Augustus Sakai is one of the a better guy, a little more higher up in the rankings of the UFC heavyweight division. Not as high as Rosenstruck at this moment, but Rosenstruck's dropped a couple, and so it's going to be really interesting to see how he's able to bounce back. This dude, man. If Rosenstruck when he's still undefeated, this dude has so much power behind those gloves. So man, heavyweights throw it down. I love this. I think there's like 3 or 4 on this card alone, so it's gonna be a good time.
Yeah, we got Makwan Amir Khani on this card as well, trying to make I think he lost his last fight. And then we also have Francisco Trinaldo, who's 42 years old and still going hard.
Yeah, Amir Khani lost his last fight to that aforementioned Edson Barboza. So
yep. Exactly. At featherweight, right?
Yeah, that's a featherweight. It's going to be a good card, though, man. I'm super excited to finally have some stuff back.
How should be action-packed.
Right. How can we not be? But, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to cap things off with the Nene of the Week. And my award winner this week, honestly, it was a little tougher trying to find a real solid contender just because, the lack of fights, lack of cards. Obviously, that's going to take away some of the amount of nominations I could throw out there. But what I have to give it to is that right now, if you look at the card lineup for UFC 264, that's the Dustin Poirier, Conor McGregor card taking place in July. If you look at that, the co-main event is going to be Greg Hardy and Tai Tuivasa. And while that is a solid fight, there's going to be some heavy leather thrown in that one. And, like, fingers crossed that we get to see Tai Tuivasa come out on top of that one. I kind of had to give this award to Stephen Thompson and Gilbert Burns because, man, I'm super excited. Like, I know you are too. I'm super excited about this matchup between the welterweights because Gilbert Burns, coming off that loss against Kamaru Usman, he has a really good chance to get back up in those rankings and get in maybe another welterweight title shot sometime really soon. That'll stop by knockout Stephen Thompson. Stephen Thompson, though, is one of the very few people in that welterweight division that hasn't fought Kamaru Usman. And presumably, if he gets a win, especially it depends on how he gets a win over Gilbert Burns, he could put himself in line to be the next guy to fight for Kamaru Usman's belt. So, I really want to see that fight, just because it's something new, something fresh. And I think Stephen Thompson, his karate and really awkward style, you have him as your top 5 strikers for good reason. This guy's really weird and awkward to handle. Those kicks are some of the greatest things you'll ever see. I love this fight. But they have to play second fiddle. They're going to be behind Greg Hardy and Tai Tuivasa. I feel that's a little disrespectful given all the hype and what's riding on the line of this fight. That co-main's almost a throwaway fight at this point. Agree?
I think it's fine. If you want to Nene Stephen Thompson and Gilbert Burns for that, that's fine. I just don't. If the way that I've heard it most of the time from the fighters, straight from the horse's mouth, is it really doesn't matter unless you're the main event on a pay-per-view or just main event in general. Like you don't really see an increase, a bump in pay. It's just kind of like you get it done faster. So, but I do agree. I think it would be nice to have them as co-main because you want to build up that next fight potentially. But there's also so many other that could kind of just give you a little inkling of what they're thinking, because I think that Leon Edwards and Nate Diaz fight is probably what they're angling for right now.
Yeah, right.
So that's probably why they gave the nod to Tai Tuivasa and Greg Hardy, because they're like, man, if Tuivasa can take care of business here, You know, that's another big win for him. And Greg Hardy has a big following, whether they hate him or, you know.
I love or hate him, right? Mostly hate, but
I was going to say whether they hate him or strongly dislike him.
He does bring guys to the product.
He does, you know. So all that taps into that NFL fan base.
Mm-hmm. Or also just people wanted to see him get murked. Eyes are eyes, you know.
That Floyd Mayweather kind of Jake Paul effect, you know.
Yeah, it's a real thing. It's a real thing.
It is. He's got the villain, the heel role.
Right? But nonetheless, might be a little bit of a weaker Nene, but it's a Nene nonetheless. But ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for UFC Talk 46. Let us know what your thoughts on any of the topics that we covered, how you feel about them over, like I said, the socials, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube comments, or leave a 5-star review over on Apple Podcasts. Blake, we finally get back to fighting, and it feels like we've been on the way for a year, but we're actually here. And we get the return of TUF over the since, and it's been gone for 3 years from us. So, your thoughts on TUF 29 in one word or phrase?
Shoot. I'm super looking forward to it. Excitement. I don't know, man.
Hey, I'll take that one. Ladies and gentlemen, enjoy the return of TUF and enjoy watching some big old heavyweights throw some leather in the cage this weekend. We will see you next week on UFC Vegas, on UFC Talk 47.